Whoa, okay. Diving into this Paste magazine piece, and honestly, I'm kind of feeling the weight of this one. It's like we're not just talking regular campaign trail heat anymore, you know? This is different.
Yeah, the temperature definitely feels different this time around.
This article, it's about some of the language Donald Trump is using about his opponents. And calling it intense feels like an understatement.
I hear that. The language is definitely escalating.
Will Neal, the author, he really zeroes in on Trump using this phrase, the enemy within. And, like, he's not being subtle about who he's talking about. It's giving me chills, honestly. What's your take on that?
It's really striking because it's not just disagreeing with your opponents, right? It's this
Yeah.
whole other thing. It's painting them as dangerous, as a threat from inside. And that's where things get really unsettling really fast.
Exactly. And the article, it talks about that moment, you know, the one with Casey Hunt on CNN.
Yeah.
She was so visibly shaken trying to even process what Trump was saying.
Oh, yeah, that was something. He's talking about using the National Guard, the military even, to deal with these so-called enemies.
Mm.
And Hunt, she was just, I don't even know, at a loss for words. You could see it in her face.
Totally. It was like she was trying to find some way to respond to do her job without just completely, I don't know, losing it on live TV. Like watching someone try to defuse a live grenade, that's what it felt like.
And then, boom, the panel lights up, right?
Yeah.
You've got Matt Gorman, and everybody knows he's a Republican strategist. He jumps in and says, oh, well, Trump's just talking about riot control, that's all.
And on the other side, you've got Megan Hayes, the former Biden aide, and she is not having it, not even a little bit. She basically says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that Trump believes every word he's saying, that this is who he is at his core. You could feel the tension through the screen, I swear.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what that moment really highlighted for me? How differently this kind of rhetoric lands on people, which just shows you how divided things are right now. And you know where the article really takes a turn? And this is where it gets really interesting, historically speaking.
Okay, I'm listening.
Neal connects this enemy within talk from Trump back to Senator Joseph McCarthy back in the 50s.
McCarthyism. Okay, wait, now my ears are pricking up. Wasn't he the one who basically spearheaded that whole Red Scare era, accusing everyone left and right of being a communist?
Bingo. Used his position to go after people in government, entertainment, you name it, saying they were communist sympathizers. And a lot of times, zero proof. And it worked, by the way. That whole period cast this huge shadow over free speech. People were terrified to speak up, disagree, because who wants to be branded an enemy of the state?
So hold on, let me get this straight. The article is drawing a direct line between what Trump is saying now and what McCarthy was doing back then.
It's a bold comparison for sure, no doubt. And the article goes back on the historical parallels. McCarthyism wasn't just about politics, you see. It was about creating this whole atmosphere of fear, of suspicion, and it had real consequences. People lost their livelihoods, their reputations, all because of these accusations. Just imagine living in a time when you were afraid to even voice your own opinion, just because you might be labeled an enemy of the state, just for disagreeing.
Yeah, that's pretty intense. And that's what's so unnerving about this, right? It's like we've been down this road before and we know how dangerous it can get.
Yeah, and it's not just the McCarthyism thing, to be honest. The article, it goes even deeper.
Right.
It points out all these other things about Trump's campaign that when you start putting the pieces together, well, let's just say it paints a pretty unsettling picture.
You're talking about stuff like his choice of venue for that rally,
Right.
right? Madison Square Garden. Which, okay, on the one hand, yeah, iconic, legendary, I get it, but...
Exactly. It's not exactly a neutral space, historically speaking, is it?
Okay, now you're jogging my memory. There was something about... Wait, was that the place where... Oh gosh, it was a Nazi rally back in the day, wasn't it?
The article brings up that very rally, in fact. 1939, massive Nazi rally, right there in Madison Square Garden.
See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, you can't tell me that's just a coincidence, not when you have everything else going on.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it, about the message being sent, whether it's intentional or not. And then there's that whole thing, the reports about white supremacist slogans popping up at Trump's event in Michigan.
Which, if I'm remembering right, was right after he made those just awful comments about immigrants being, like, inherently predisposed to violence, that whole murder gene thing, which, for the record, I still can't believe he actually said out loud.
Right, and you can't forget that piece of the puzzle either, because now you've got this pattern emerging. Look, I get it. Some people, they'll try to dismiss each of these things in isolation. Oh, it's an isolated incident, or the media's blowing it out of proportion. But when you take a step back, look at the big picture. Look at all of it together.
It's hard to ignore, right? Like, at a certain point, you have to at least consider the possibility that this is a deliberate strategy.
Exactly. And that's the really dangerous part, you see. Because when you have a political leader, especially someone as influential as Donald Trump, using this type of rhetoric, making these sorts of connections, even subtly, it normalizes it. It creates this environment where extremism can flourish.
And where people who already hold those views, those extreme views, they feel validated. They feel emboldened to act on them.
Exactly. That's what makes it so dangerous. It's not just about the words themselves, it's about what those words can lead to. Hate, violence, the erosion of democratic values.
So, okay, where do we go from here? If this is a pattern, if this is calculated, what can we even do about it? It feels so overwhelming.
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And believe me, there are no easy answers. But I think it starts with awareness, like what we're doing right now. Recognizing these patterns, understanding the historical context, and being willing to call out this type of rhetoric for what it is.
I hear that. Awareness is huge, for sure. But it's hard, right? It's like you try to speak out against this kind of thing, especially when it's someone as powerful as Trump, and it feels like you're just, I don't know, spitting into the wind.
Oh, it takes courage, no question. But that's where I think the role of the media and just like each of us as individuals, it becomes even more crucial. We can't just let this stuff become normal, like it's just background noise, part of the political landscape.
It's like we have to hold our leaders accountable for every word, every little hint, every implication, every like dog whistle, even if it feels like no one's listening.
100%. And it's not just about leaders either. It's about holding each other accountable too. Like your uncle makes that off-color joke at Thanksgiving dinner. You got to say something. Your friend shares that meme that goes a little too far. Push back on it.
Because that's how it starts, right? Little things, casual acceptance, that's how this stuff festered.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture where this kind of rhetoric, no matter who it's coming from, it's just not okay. Because silence, it sends a message too. Silence is like, we're good with this.
Yeah.
And we can't be bystanders. We can't.
This whole conversation, I gotta say, it's got me feeling like, I don't know, we're at this tipping point, where even the very definition of what's acceptable, what's okay to say in a political context, it's up for grabs.
And that's exactly why it's more important than ever to be informed, right? To engage with these ideas even when they're uncomfortable, to have these discussions, to protect people's right to disagree even when you don't like what they're saying. That's what a healthy democracy looks like, or at least it used to, if we let that slide. Well, history's got a way of repeating itself, doesn't it? It's not pretty.
Yeah, no, not a repeat performance I'm interested in, that's for sure. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I guess the big question I'm left with is, what do we do? I mean, when you're faced with this kind of rhetoric, this kind of like very real danger, what can any one person actually do about it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't think there's a simple answer or a single answer for that matter, but it's a question we absolutely have to wrestle with because I really believe this. The health of our democracy, maybe even its survival, might depend on it.
It's a lot to think about. And on that note, we're going to leave you all to do just that. Think about it, talk about it, and most importantly, do something about it. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Stay engaged, stay vigilant, and we'll see you next time.